Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so welcoming. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years now, and those years had been the best in human history. They had learned so much from their alien friends and had given back just as much in return. Dr. Lisa Carter walked into the bridge, her face showing worry. She carried a data pad with the latest reports from her Genesis project. The project was humanity's gift to the galaxy, a way to turn dead planets into living worlds in just a few years instead of thousands. Many refugee species had found new homes thanks to her work. "Jake, we have a problem," Lisa said quietly. "The Council is asking too many questions about Genesis. They want all our research files and they want to control the project." Jake frowned. The Council had never asked for such things before. When humans had shared their faster-than-light travel improvements, the Council had been grateful. When human doctors had found cures for diseases that had killed aliens for millions of years, they had celebrated. Why was Genesis different? Admiral Frank Davis appeared on the main screen from Earth. His face looked tired and worried. "Jake, I need you to return to Earth immediately. The Council has called an emergency session. They want to discuss the Genesis project." "What kind of discussion?" Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. "The kind where they have already made up their minds," Frank replied. 47 species have signed a petition calling Genesis too dangerous for any one species to control. They want us to hand over everything and stop all terraforming work. Lisa felt her heart sink. Genesis was her life's work, but more than that, it was hope for billions of beings across the galaxy. Dead worlds could become gardens. Refugee populations could have real homes instead of crowded space stations. Why would anyone want to stop that? Ambassador Kate Williams joined the conversation from the Council station. "The Zephyrians are leading the petition," she said. "They claim that humans are changing the galaxy too fast. They say we are dangerous because we solve problems in decades that they have struggled with for millions of years." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. "We are dangerous because we help people?" "That is exactly what they think," Kate replied. "I have been listening to their private conversations. They are afraid of us. They think that if humans keep advancing so quickly, we will become the dominant species in the galaxy." The journey back to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Jake watched as alien fleets began moving toward human space. Ships from species that had called humans their friends were now taking aggressive positions around human colonies. Dr. Lisa Carter spent those 3 days destroying her personal research notes. If the Council wanted Genesis, they would get the basic version, but not the advanced techniques she had been developing. Those secrets would die with her if necessary. When Jake arrived at Earth, he found Admiral Frank Davis in the command center, surrounded by screens showing ship movements across the galaxy. The sight was terrifying. Every human colony, every human ship, every human station was being surrounded by alien fleets. "How many ships are out there?" Jake asked. "More than we have ever seen in one place," Frank replied. "The Zephyrians brought their entire war fleet. The Crystalline Collective has sent their battle formations. Even the Peaceful Harmony Union has armed vessels heading our way." Jake looked at the numbers on the screen. 47 species, thousands of ships, millions of trained alien warriors. Against them, humanity had perhaps 200 ships and a few 100,000 trained soldiers. The math was simple and terrible. "They gave us an ultimatum," Frank continued. "We have 24 hours to surrender all Genesis technology, disarm our fleets, and accept Council oversight of all human research. If we refuse, they will consider us enemies of galactic peace." "And if we accept?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "We become a junior species. No more independent research, no more exploration. We follow Council rules. For everything. We become what they want us to be, not what we choose to be." Lisa Carter joined them in the command center. "I have been thinking about this," she said. "The Council is not just afraid of Genesis. They are afraid of what Genesis represents. We humans look at a dead world and see a garden. We look at a problem and see a solution. They look at the same things and see only what has always been. Jake understood what she meant. In 50 years, humans had brought more change to the galaxy than most species had seen in 1,000,000 years. Not bad change? Good change. Better medicine, faster travel, new worlds for the homeless. But change was still change. An old species did not like change. The communication system activated, and the face of High Counselor Zethkri appeared on the screen. The Zephyrian leader had been alive for over 3,000 years and had been part of the council for most of that time. Admiral Davis, Zethkri spoke in his mechanical voice, the council has made its decision. The human experiment in independent development must end. You have proven that young species cannot be trusted with advanced technology. The Genesis project will be transferred to council control immediately. Frank looked directly at the alien. Leader, High Counselor, Genesis has helped dozens of species find new homes. Our medical advances have saved millions of lives. Our improvements to space travel have made the galaxy smaller and more connected. How is any of this dangerous? Because it changes things too quickly, Zethkri replied. The galaxy has been stable for millions of years. Species develop slowly, join the council when they are ready, and contribute what they can. Humans have disrupted this natural order. You must return to your proper place. Jake stepped forward. And if we refuse? Then you will be treated as enemies of galactic peace, Zethkri said without emotion. Your ships will be destroyed, your colonies will be occupied, and your people will be relocated to appropriate worlds where they can contribute to galactic society without causing disruption. The transmission ended, leaving the three humans alone with their impossible choice. Surrender and lose their freedom, or fight and face certain destruction. We cannot win a war against the entire galaxy, Frank said quietly. We cannot accept slavery either, Jake replied. Lisa looked at both. Men. Maybe we do not have to choose right now. Maybe we can find another way. But even as she spoke, the first alien ships began entering Earth's solar system. The siege of humanity had begun, and there was no going back. Jake returned to his ship and prepared for the fight of his life. He knew they would lose, but he also knew that humans had never surrendered without a fight. If this was the end of human independence, they would make it a fight that the galaxy would remember. The first battle began near Mars. Human ships, outnumbered 50-1, fought with everything they had. Jake's tactical skills and human determination gave them some early victories, but the numbers were too great. For every alien ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically to hide her research. She created false data files and destroyed real ones. If humans were going to be enslaved, she would make sure that Genesis technology would die with free humanity. The siege lasted 3 months. Earth's orbital defenses fell one by one. The human colonies called for help, but there was no help to give. Jake's fleet was being destroyed ship by ship, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. In the end, Admiral Frank Davis made the hardest decision of his life. With Earth cities burning and millions of humans dying, he opened a communication channel to High Counselor Zethkri. We surrender, Frank said, his voice breaking. But know this, we will never forget what you have done to us. Zethkri's reply was cold and final. You will forget, Admiral. In time, you will forget everything. Accept your place in the galactic order. The age of human freedom was over. The age of human suffering was about to begin. 10 years had passed since the surrender. Commander Ben Taylor crouched in the darkness of an old mining tunnel on Mars, listening to the sounds of alien guards walking above. The red planet had become a prison camp, just like Earth and every other world where humans lived. The Galactic Council had wasted no time in showing humanity their new place in the galaxy. Human cities were destroyed or converted into work camps. Human children were taken from their parents and sent to re-education centers where they learned to serve their alien masters. Human adults were sorted by their skills and shipped to different worlds like Cargo. Ben remembered the day they came for his family. Zephyrian soldiers had broken down his door and dragged his wife and daughter away. His wife went to a farming world to grow food for alien species. His daughter, only 8 years old, was sent to a facility where human children learned to be servants and entertainers for alien households. That was the day Ben decided to fight back, even if it meant his death. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked quietly in her hidden laboratory, deep beneath the ruins of what had once been New York City. The council had forbidden humans from having any advanced technology, but Amy had managed to hide her equipment before the occupation began. Now she spent her days working on the most important project of her life. The aliens were not content with just enslaving humanity. They wanted to make sure humans could never rise again. Amy had discovered that the food supplies given to human workers contained chemicals that made it harder for humans to have children. She had also found that the medical treatments forced on human populations included genetic changes that would make future generations weaker and more obedient. "They are trying to breed the fight out of us," Amy whispered to herself as she studied the latest samples. "But they do not understand humans very well." Amy had been working for 5 years to preserve pure human genetic material. In secret locations across dozens of worlds, she had hidden samples of human DNA from before the occupation. If the Council succeeded in changing humanity, these samples would be the key to restoring what they had lost. Colonel Steve Parker moved carefully through the quarters of a council military base on Europa. He wore the gray uniform of a human maintenance worker, invisible to the alien guards who barely noticed human servants. Over the past decade, Steve had learned that being ignored was sometimes more valuable than being feared. Steve was mapping every council facility he could access. He memorized guard rotations, weapon placements, and security systems. He noted which aliens were cruel and which ones were merely following orders. All of this information went into secret reports that were passed through the underground network of human resistance fighters. The resistance had to be more careful than any military force in human history. The Council had made it clear that any sign of organized human resistance would result in the execution of entire communities. When a group of humans on Titan had tried to sabotage an alien mining operation, the Council had responded by killing every human on the moon. After that, the resistance changed its approach. Instead of direct attacks, they focused on gathering information, preserving knowledge, and preparing for a future that might never come. Engineer Rachel Turner sat in her tiny quarters on a council construction ship, pretending to read an approved entertainment file while actually reviewing hidden technical data. Rachel had been assigned to help build new council facilities across the galaxy, but she was really learning how their technology worked. The council had made a mistake. When they decided to use human workers for technical jobs, they thought humans were too stupid and broken to understand what they were seeing. They were wrong. Rachel had spent years studying alien technology from the inside. She understood their computers, their weapons, their ships, and their defense systems better than many of the aliens who used them. More importantly, she had figured out their weaknesses. Every piece of council technology had flaws that could be exploited. Their computers had backdoors that could be accessed if you knew the right codes. Their weapons had safety systems that could be turned against them. Their ships had design problems that made them vulnerable to the right kind of attack. All of this knowledge was carefully recorded and hidden in places the Council would never think to look. Human workers across the galaxy were slowly building a complete picture of their oppressors' capabilities. 50 years after the surrender, the situation had grown worse. The original humans who remembered freedom were dying of old age or execution. The younger generation had never known anything but slavery. Many of them believed the Council propaganda that said humans were naturally inferior and deserved their fate. Ben Taylor, now an old man, met with the other resistance leaders in a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of London. The group was smaller now. Many had been caught and killed over the years. Others had simply given up hope. "The Council is planning something new," Ben said quietly. "My sources tell me they are going to start the final solution next year." Dr. Amy Rodriguez, her hair now gray but her eyes still sharp, looked up from her notes. "What kind of final solution?" "They want to replace all human workers with clones," Ben replied. Artificial humans that look like us but have no memory of freedom, no ability to resist, and no desire for anything except serving their masters. The room fell silent. They had all feared this day would come. The council had grown tired of managing human populations. It was easier to create new workers than to control old ones. Colonel Steve Parker spoke first. "How long do we have?" "The project starts in 6 months," Ben replied. "They plan to phase out natural humans over the next century. By the time they are finished, real humanity will be extinct." Rachel Turner stood up slowly. "Then it is time." "Time for what?" Amy asked. "Time to activate the deepest protocols." Rachel replied, "We have spent 100 years preparing for this moment. We have the genetic samples, the hidden facilities, the technical knowledge, and the network of loyal humans across the galaxy. If we are going to save humanity, we have to act now." Ben looked around the room at his old friends. They were all in their 80s and 90s now, the last generation to remember what freedom felt like. "The odds are impossible. Even if we activate everything we have built, we are still just a few thousand humans against an entire galaxy of aliens." "The odds were impossible 100 years ago, too," Amy replied. "But we survived, we learned, we prepared." "Maybe it is. Time to see if all that preparation was worth something." Steve nodded slowly. "The message will take months to reach all our hidden facilities. Once we send it, there is no going back. The Council will hunt down every human they can find." "They are already planning to kill us all," Rachel pointed out. "At least this way we die fighting." Then walked to an old computer terminal hidden behind a false wall. This machine was connected to a secret network that had taken decades to build. With the right code, it could send a message to Resistance. Cells across the galaxy. His fingers hovered over the keys. Once he typed the message, hundreds of thousands of humans would receive their orders. Hidden facilities would activate. Secret weapons would be revealed. The careful work of a century would either save humanity or destroy what little remained of it. Ben thought about his wife and daughter, lost so many years ago. He thought about all the humans who had died in slavery, never knowing that others were fighting to free them. He thought about the children being raised to believe they were animals, and the adults who had forgotten they were once a proud species. Then he typed the message that would change everything. Remember who we were? The signal went out across the galaxy, carried by hidden transmitters and secret codes. On distant worlds, humans working in mines and factories felt their hidden communication devices vibrate. In the deepest parts of space, automated systems began waking up after decades of sleep. The Council had made humanity suffer for 100 years. They thought they had broken the human spirit. They were about to learn that some things could not be broken, only hidden until the time was right. The age of human suffering was about to end. The age of human awakening was about to begin. Director Alex Chen opened his eyes for the first time in 200,000 years. The cryogenic pod hissed as it released the chemicals that had kept him alive, while the galaxy above forgot that places like this existed. Around him, thousands of other pods were opening, revealing men and women who had volunteered to sleep through the darkest ages of human history. The hidden ark had been humanity's greatest secret. Built inside a rogue planet that drifted through empty space between star systems, it had taken 50 years to construct and another 50 to fill with the best minds humanity could offer. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and artists had all volunteered to sleep until the signal came. Alex stood slowly, his muscles weak from the long sleep. The message, "Remember who we were," had triggered automatic systems that woke the sleepers and activated the Ark's main computers. He walked to the central command room where holographic displays showed him what had happened while he slept. 100,000 years had passed. The galaxy had changed, but humanity's suffering had only grown worse. The Council had kept their promise to eliminate natural humans, replacing them with clone workers who knew nothing of freedom. But the Council had made one mistake. They had forgotten that humans were very good at hiding things. Captain Maya Johnson stood on the bridge of the Nightfall, a ship that had been under construction for the past century in a hidden shipyard inside an asteroid. She was not one of the sleepers. She was descended from humans who had stayed awake through the long night, passing down their knowledge and their anger from generation to generation. Maya's great-grandmother had been one of the original resistance fighters. Her grandmother had built the first hidden factories. Her mother had designed the weapons that would soon be used against the Council. Maya herself had been born for this moment, trained from childhood to command ships that the Council could not even imagine. The Nightfall was not like the old human ships that had been destroyed centuries ago. This vessel used technology that combined human creativity with knowledge stolen from the Council over thousands of years. It could move through space without being detected, strike targets without warning, and disappear before the enemy knew what had happened. Dr. Nick Rivera stood in the communication center of the Hidden Ark, preparing to send the most important message in human history. He had been asleep for 200,000 years, but his mind was sharp and his purpose was clear. The time had come to wake up every human in the galaxy. Nick had helped design the Great Remembering before he went to sleep. Hidden in the genetic code of every natural human were memories and abilities that had been locked away for their own protection. The Council thought they had broken humanity, but they had only been looking at the surface. The Great Remembering would unlock what the Council had tried to destroy. Humans who had been raised as slaves would suddenly remember that their ancestors had been explorers and inventors. Workers who had been trained to obey would remember that humans had once been free. The change would happen in minutes, but it would transform the galaxy forever. General Carl Brooks walked through the command center of Freedom Base, a military facility that had been hidden beneath the ice of Plefo for over a century. Around him, soldiers who had been waiting their entire lives for this moment prepared weapons and vehicles that the Council had never seen. Carl was the great-great-grandson of one of the original resistance leaders. His family had spent generations planning for this day, designing tactics and strategies that would give humanity the advantage despite being vastly outnumbered. The Council had superior numbers, but humans had something more valuable. They had been planning this war for thousands of years. The Council species had grown soft during their long rule. They had not fought a real war in millions of years. They had forgotten what it was like to face an enemy that was desperate, angry, and completely committed to victory. They were about to learn. The signal went out across the galaxy. On 10,000 worlds, humans working in mines and factories suddenly stopped what they were doing. Their minds filled with memories that had been locked away for generations. They remembered Earth's blue skies, the taste of freedom, and the sound of human laughter on the prison world of Kepler 442b. A human clone named John had been designed to be the perfect worker. He was strong, obedient, and had never questioned his place in the galaxy. When the Great Remembering reached him, John collapsed to his knees as his mind exploded with new knowledge. He remembered that his genetic template had been a human named Jonathan Miller, a scientist who had worked on the Genesis project. He remembered the betrayal, the war, and the centuries of slavery that followed. Most importantly, he remembered that he was not alone. All around him, other human workers were experiencing the same awakening. They looked at each other with new eyes, seeing not fellow slaves, but brothers and sisters who shared a common heritage of suffering and a common dream of freedom. The Council guards noticed the change immediately. The humans had stopped working and were looking at each other in ways that made the aliens nervous. Some guards tried to restore order with electric shocks and threats, but the humans no longer responded to pain the way they had before. Captain Maya Johnson received the signal that she had been waiting for her entire life. All units, this is Nightfall Command. Operation Daybreak is now active. Remember who we were and show them who we have become. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, hidden human ships began emerging from their hiding places. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves to be military bases. Seemingly empty planets suddenly showed signs of massive populations and industrial activity. The Council had been watching humanity for thousands of years, but they had only been seeing what humans wanted them to see. The real human civilization had been growing in secret, becoming stronger and more advanced with each passing century. On the Council homeworld of Zephyria, High Counselor Zethkri received the first reports of human activity with disbelief. According to his intelligence services, there were perhaps a few million humans left in the galaxy, all of them broken and controlled. The reports he was reading described organized fleets, advanced weapons, and coordinated attacks across hundreds of star systems. "This is impossible," Zethkri said to his advisors. "We destroyed human civilization. We have been monitoring them for millennia. They are nothing but workers and servants." His military commander, General Rextel, studied the incoming data. With growing alarm, "High Counselor, we are detecting human ships using technology that is centuries ahead of anything we have seen. They are attacking our facilities with precision that suggests detailed knowledge of our defenses." The truth was slowly becoming clear. The Council had not been watching humanity for thousands of years. Humanity had been watching the Council, learning their weaknesses, and planning their revenge. Dr. Nick Rivera's voice echoed across the galaxy as he broadcast the truth to every human settlement. "Children of Earth, the long night is ending. For 100,000 years we have suffered under alien rule. We have been slaves, servants, and playthings for species that forgot what it means to struggle for survival. But we have not forgotten. We have been waiting, learning, and preparing." The message continued, carrying with it the full history of human suffering and the promise of human vengeance. The Council thought they had destroyed us, but they only made us stronger. They thought they had broken our spirit, but they only taught us patience. They thought they had won, but they only delayed their own defeat. On Council worlds across the galaxy, alien populations watched in horror as their human workers transformed. Before their eyes, servants who had been invisible for centuries suddenly stood tall and proud. Workers who had never spoken unless spoken to began making demands. The natural order that had existed for millennia was crumbling in real time. The awakening was not just about remembering the past. It was about revealing the future. Humans had spent 100,000 years preparing for this moment, and they had used that time well. They had technology the Council could not understand, strategies the Council could not predict, and a determination the Council could not break. The age of Council rule was ending. The age of human ascendancy was about to begin, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Fleet Admiral Tony Garcia stood before the massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked Council strongholds, blue dots showed human positions, and yellow dots indicated neutral territories. After 300,000 years of planning, humanity was finally ready to collect the debt that the galaxy owed them. Tony had been born in the hidden colonies, raised by parents who had never forgotten what the Council had done to their ancestors. He had spent his entire life preparing for this war, not just to win it, but to make sure that every species that had participated in human suffering would understand the consequences of their actions. "Admiral," his aide Captain Ryan Martinez said, approaching with the latest intelligence reports, "the Zephyrian homeworld is completely surrounded. Their entire fleet is trapped in orbit, but they have not yet attempted to break through our blockade." Tony nodded. The Zephyrians had been the architects of humanity's destruction, and they would be the last to face judgment. For now, humanity was content to let them watch as their empire crumbled around them, just as they had once watched human civilization burn. Professor Linda Walsh worked tirelessly in her mobile command center, traveling from world to document the Council's crimes. Her team of investigators had spent the past 50 years gathering evidence of every atrocity committed against humanity over the centuries on the mining world of Zarian 7. Linda interviewed elderly humans who remembered being taken from their families as children. On the agricultural planet of Verdania, she recorded testimonies from humans who had been forced to work 18-hour days growing food they were never allowed to eat. On the entertainment stations orbiting Rigel, she documented the horrific treatment of humans who had been bred specifically to amuse alien audiences. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council had not just enslaved humanity. They had systematically dehumanized them, treating humans like animals to be bred, trained, and discarded when they were no longer useful. Every crime will be documented, Linda said to her team as they prepared to leave another liberated world. Every victim will be remembered. When this war is over, the galaxy will know exactly what the Council did to us and why justice was necessary. Captain Ryan Martinez commanded the Judgment Squads, elite human forces that specialized in dismantling Council military installations without destroying them. The humans did not want to conquer the galaxy. They wanted to make sure their former oppressors experienced the same helplessness that humans had felt for centuries. On the military world of Fortress Prime, Ryan's forces had spent 6 months slowly taking control of the planet's defenses. They did not attack with overwhelming force. Instead, they methodically disabled one system at a time, allowing the Council defenders to watch their carefully constructed defenses fall apart piece by piece. The psychological effect was devastating. Council soldiers who had never known defeat suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human forces appeared where they should not have been able to go, using technology that should not have existed, executing tactics that should have been impossible. Ryan stood in the former command center of Fortress Prime, watching as the last Council defenders surrendered. "Send a message to all Council military installations," he ordered. "Tell them that Fortress Prime has fallen. Tell them that humanity remembers every weapon that was used against us, and we know how to turn each one against its creators." Dr. Helen Foster oversaw the restoration project from her command ship orbiting Earth. The blue planet was slowly healing from centuries of abuse and neglect. Forests were being replanted, oceans were being cleaned, and the great cities of humanity were being rebuilt, but the restoration project was about more than just fixing damage. Helen's teams were also working to reverse the genetic modifications that the Council had forced on human populations. Clone workers were being treated to restore their full human capabilities. Humans who had been bred for specific tasks were being helped to remember their true potential. "We are not just restoring our world," Helen explained to a group of newly liberated humans. "We are restoring ourselves. The Council tried to make us less than human, but they only succeeded in making us more determined to reclaim what we lost." The psychological warfare against the Council continued on multiple fronts. Human fleets would appear in Council space, scan their defenses, and then disappear without attacking. The message was clear: we know where you are, we know how to defeat you, and we will come for you when we are ready. Council species that had been neutral during the original war suddenly found themselves facing hard choices. The humans were offering amnesty to species that had not actively participated in human oppression, but they were also making it clear that continued support for the Council would be considered an act of war. One by one, Council allies began abandoning their former partners. Trade agreements were canceled, military pacts were dissolved, and diplomatic ties were severed. The galaxy-spanning alliance that had once seemed unbreakable was falling apart as each species tried to save itself. Hi. Councillor Zethkri sat in his private chambers on the Zephyrian homeworld, staring at reports that made no sense to him. According to his intelligence services, humanity had somehow developed a civilization that was more advanced than anything in the galaxy. They had ships that could travel faster than light without using conventional engines. They had weapons that could disable entire fleets without firing a shot. They had soldiers who seemed to know exactly where Council forces would be before those forces knew it themselves. How is this possible? Zethkri asked his advisors for the 1,000th time. We monitored them for millennia. We controlled their education, their technology, their reproduction. How could they have developed such capabilities? His science advisor? Dr. Kreltha had been studying captured human technology for months. High Counselor, I believe we made a fundamental error in our understanding of human nature. We assumed that because we controlled their bodies, we also controlled their minds. We were wrong. The truth was becoming clear to the Council leadership, though most refused to accept it. Humanity had never truly been defeated. They had only pretended to be broken while secretly preparing for their revenge. Every act of submission had been calculated. Every moment of apparent weakness had been strategic. Captain Ryan Martinez received new orders from Fleet Admiral Garcia. The systematic dismantling of Council defenses was nearly complete. It was time to move to the next phase of the operation, making the Council leadership face trial for their crimes against humanity. "Begin Operation Justice," Ryan ordered his fleet commanders. "All Council leaders who participated in the original betrayal are to be captured alive. They will face trial for genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentient beings." The operation was swift and precise. Human forces had spent decades identifying and tracking every Council leader who had been involved in humanity's enslavement. They knew where these individuals lived, where they worked, and where they would try to hide. Within a week, hundreds of Council leaders found themselves in human custody. They were not tortured or abused. They were simply held in comfortable cells while Professor Linda Walsh's teams prepared the evidence that would be used against them. The trials would be broadcast across the galaxy, serving both as justice for humanity and as education for other species. The galaxy would learn exactly what had been done to humanity and why such actions could never be allowed to happen again. Dr. Helen Foster stood on the observation deck of her command ship, looking down at Earth's restored surface. The planet was beautiful again, but it was also different. Humanity had learned hard lessons during their centuries of suffering, and they would never again be the trusting species that had once welcomed aliens as friends. "We are not the same people who were betrayed so long ago," Helen said to her assistant. "We are stronger, wiser, and more careful. The galaxy will be a safer place under human guidance, but it will also be a place where justice is more important than mercy." The age of Council rule was ending, but humanity's work was far from finished. Justice demanded that every crime be answered, every victim be remembered, and every species learn why the strong must never be allowed to abuse the weak. President Sam Collins stood at the podium in the rebuilt United Nations building on Earth, looking out at representatives from across the galaxy. The Great Hall was filled with humans and aliens, but for the first time in 500,000 years, the humans were the ones in charge. Sam had been elected by the liberated human populations to lead the new human republic. His first task was to decide what to do with the defeated Council species. Some humans wanted revenge, calling for the same treatment that had been given to humanity for centuries. Others argued for mercy, saying that humanity should be better than their former oppressors. "We stand at a crossroads," Sam began his speech. "We can choose to become the monsters that once ruled us, or we can choose to build something better. We have the power to enslave the galaxy, but we also have the wisdom that comes from knowing what slavery feels like." Admiral Grace Thompson sat in the front row, listening to the president's words. She had spent the last 10 years dismantling the Council's military infrastructure, ensuring that no species would ever again have the power to oppress others on such a scale. Every Council warship had been destroyed or converted to peaceful purposes. Every weapons factory had been shut down or repurposed for civilian use. Grace understood the temptation for revenge. She had lost her own family to Council cruelty centuries ago. But she also understood that true victory meant creating a galaxy where such tragedies could never happen again. Dr. Victor Wong walked through the rehabilitation center on the former Council world of Harmony Station. Around him, Zephyrian civilians attended classes where they learned about human history and the consequences of their species' actions. The program was voluntary, but most Zephyrians had chosen to participate after seeing the evidence of what their government had done. Victor had designed the rehabilitation programs to educate rather than punish. The goal was not to make the former Council species suffer, but to help them understand why their actions had been wrong and how they could contribute to a better future. "We are not trying to make you feel guilty," Victor explained to a group of young Zephyrians. "We are trying to help you understand how your choices affect others. Humanity spent 500,000 years learning this lesson. We hope you can learn it faster." Judge Patricia Lee presided over the Galactic Court from her chambers in Geneva. The trials of Council leaders had been going on for 5 years, and each one was broadcast live across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming and the verdicts were unanimous. Crimes against humanity, genocide, slavery, and abuse of power. Patricia had been careful to ensure that every trial was fair and thorough. The defendants had access to lawyers, the right to present evidence, and the opportunity to speak in their own defense. But the facts were clear, and justice demanded consequences. High Counselor Zethkri sat in the defendant's chair, listening as Judge Patricia read his sentence. You are found guilty of crimes against humanity on a galactic scale. You orchestrated the enslavement of an entire species and the systematic destruction of their civilization. However, this court recognizes that you are a product of a system that valued power over justice. Patricia continued, you are sentenced to life in comfortable confinement with the opportunity to contribute to galactic society through education and research. You will spend your remaining years helping others understand how such crimes can be prevented in the future. The sentence was typical of the new human justice system. Punishment was balanced with rehabilitation, and even the worst criminals were given the chance to make amends for their actions. President Sam Collins met with representatives from the younger alien species that had played no role in humanity's oppression. These species had been born into a galaxy ruled by the Council, and many had never known that alternatives existed. We welcome you as equals in the new galactic order, Sam told the delegates. The mistakes of the past do not define your future. We judge species and individuals by their actions, not their heritage. The delegate from the Luminous Coalition, a species that had achieved spaceflight only 1,000 years ago, spoke nervously. President Collins, we are grateful for your mercy, but we are also confused. Our histories tell us that the strong rule the weak. It has always been this way. Why do humans choose differently? Sam smiled sadly. Because we learned what it feels like to be weak. We learned that strength without wisdom leads to suffering. We learned that true power comes from protecting others, not from controlling them. Admiral Grace Thompson oversaw the formation of the new Galactic Defense Force, unlike the Council's military, which had been designed to enforce the will of the powerful. The GDF existed to protect the rights of all species. Its ships patrolled trade routes, its soldiers protected colonies from pirates and raiders, and its officers ensured that no species could again build the kind of war machine that the Council had possessed. Grace had insisted that the GDF be multinational, with officers and crew from dozens of species. Humans held leadership positions, but they worked alongside aliens who had proven their commitment to justice and peace. We are not conquerors, Grace explained to her officers. We are guardians. Our job is to make sure that the strong cannot abuse the weak, that the many cannot oppress the few, and that no species ever again faces the choice between slavery and extinction. Dr. Victor Wong's rehabilitation programs had expanded to hundreds of worlds. Former Council species learned about human culture, history, and values. They studied the mistakes of the past and worked to build a better future. The programs were not just about changing minds. They were about changing entire civilizations on the crystalline collective homeworld. Victor watched as alien children played games that taught cooperation instead of competition. Their parents attended workshops on conflict resolution and peaceful coexistence. Their leaders studied human philosophy and tried to understand how power could be used responsibly. Change takes time, Victor reminded his staff. We are not just changing laws or governments. We are changing the way entire species think about power, justice, and their responsibilities to others. The transformation was not always easy. Some Council species resisted the new order, attempting to rebuild their military forces or form secret alliances against humanity. But these efforts were quickly discovered and stopped. Human intelligence networks, built over centuries of oppression, were far too sophisticated to be fooled by desperate schemes. Judge Patricia Lee completed the last of the major war crimes trials. Thousands of Council leaders had been sentenced, but the focus had always been on justice rather than revenge. Most received sentences that combined confinement with opportunities to contribute to society. The worst offenders would spend their lives in comfortable but secure facilities, while lesser criminals were given chances to make amends through community service and education. Justice has been served, Patricia announced to the galaxy. But our work is not finished. We must now build a system that ensures such crimes can never happen again. President Sam Collins stood once again before the Galactic Assembly, this time to announce the completion of humanity's great work. The council system had been completely dismantled and replaced with a federation based on equality and mutual respect. 500,000 years ago, our ancestors trusted that the galaxy would treat them fairly, Sam said. They were betrayed by species that feared their potential. Today, we have the power to take revenge for that betrayal, but we choose a different path. Sam looked out at the mixed audience of humans and aliens, former enemies now working together to build something better. We choose to create a galaxy where strength protects weakness, where wisdom guides power, and where no species will ever again face the choice between submission and extinction. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, not conquest but justice, not revenge but redemption. The age of human suffering was over. The age of human leadership had begun. And under humanity's guidance, the galaxy would learn that true civilization was measured not by the power to destroy, but by the wisdom to protect and nurture all life. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not defeating their enemies, but transforming them into allies in the cause of justice.